Today I will be providing information about legalizing cannabis and the medical/economic benefits it brings. I'm sure you have all heard about cannabis before, or the many names for it: the jazz cabbage, left-handed cigarettes, the boof, the sticky icky, the green, the tree, the gas, devil's lettuce, chronic, Mary Jane, skunk, swag, reefer, or some other variations of these. These names show the widely known prevalence of this substance. According to a 2014 study by SAMHSA shows that almost 50% of people 18 or older have used this substance before in their lifetime. Since the cannabis debate has been raging on ever since the first time it was criminalized in the 1930s, it's been a hot topic. And there's specific reasons on why cannabis should be legalized. With the audience analysis I have done, I can assume that the following things have been done, or you guys have went through. You guys have went through some type of DARE program, have heard about what marijuana is and have a stance on it, and know someone who uses marijuana. After reading the news and history behind cannabis, I know that it's unjust for a substance to be illegal while a substance such as alcohol is legal. I've experienced the effects of CBD and used it in the athletic world, and while I'm advocating for the legalization of the whole plant stemming to cancer patients that benefit from THC in the plant, which had THC and not CBD, which helps people with seizures, which I will later get into, I also foresee great economic success in the business. With the benefits that cannabis could bring to America by legalization, medicinal and economically, it only makes sense to bring it out of the black market from the hands of criminals and cartels and into the hands of the federal government. Today I hope I can convince you guys to go out and vote on ballots to help show the federal government that Americans do care about the issue by informing you about what cannabis is and the economic and medical benefits it brings. So this is weed, or cannabis. Marijuana is actually a derogatory term that was tied to Hispanics, and they use it in the 1930s, but I'll get on to that. That's a seed, and then you plant the seed, and then it grows into a plant, and then the plant creates buds or flowers, which is what most people smoke or use and put in edibles or whatever. The bud has, these are the two major chemical compounds that you're going to find in it. THC, that's a psychoactive thing, that's what makes people feel high. CBD is non-psychoactive and it's anti-inflammatory, and it can help people with like seizures, such as epilepsy and such. The problems that arise with cannabis being illegal spreads far and wide. The issues have been apparent ever since the criminalization of cannabis. Throughout the first patches, I will be going over the issues and the ones that I find most important to resolve. The criminalization of cannabis started in the 1930s. And yeah, that was later, but started in the 1930s after a film, Reefer Madness, had placed an inaccurate hysteria that led to a negative connotation against the plant. Harry J. Anslinger was the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. This was right after the Great Depression, so they needed something to go after so they could create profits for the government. So it started a racial war against the plant, and they targeted Hispanics and blacks. The Reefer Madness said that cannabis would cause African Americans to rape white women. It would make white women crave Caucasian, or make white women crave African Americans. Eventually, this led to Ronald Reagan's national address, where he addressed that drug abuse is the public's #1 enemy. This rescheduled marijuana to a Schedule I substance that has no medicinal value and has a high potential for abuse. But if you see here on the chart, it's literally the lowest. And tobacco is legal; it's way above it. Alcohol is on there somewhere, I believe. Yeah, it's almost by heroin, and it's in front of methamphetamine, which is Schedule II. So obviously you guys can see that there's obviously some bias here. With recent light shed on the benefits of cannabis, both medicinally and recreationally, we know that these statements are now to be false. These events were not only built off of false truths, but ended up hurting this nation more than it would have been if cannabis would have stayed legalized. The first large issue that people run into is that they aren't able to get the medicine that they need. Imagine a family member, or maybe someone you know who is going through chemotherapy and has issues eating because of nausea, cannabis can help that. If this plant can help benefit hundreds of thousands of people across the nation, why isn't it legal? This comes from the lobbyists that fight against the legalization of cannabis. One of the biggest lobbyists that fight against the legalization of cannabis is Big Pharma. This is because of the many different variables. Firstly, Big Pharma has already created 2 prescription pills that mimic THC or CBD, and these are called Marinol and Nabinol, I believe. They are trying to take advantage of the benefits that cannabis provides to patients without obtaining them through legal means to fill their own pockets. Secondly, cannabis helps people with pain after surgery and during chemotherapy. That's THC. CBD does not do that. THC can help reduce pain. And that's psychoactive. CBD is legal, THC is not legal. So instead of patients being able to take the opioids, which Big Pharma is shoving down their throats, they would be able to select a natural alternative that's cheaper and goes through different means of business. This is taking away profits from Big Pharma, as hospitals might provide cannabis as an alternative option. The second issue, which I find to be the greatest issue, is the way the justice system has unfairly targeted African American communities. According to an ACLU study, African Americans are 3.7 times more likely than Caucasians to be arrested for cannabis. According to the same ACLU study, 52% of all drug arrests are because of cannabis. Because of this, the mass incarceration rate has gone up, and people's entire lives are being destroyed for a relatively harmless substance. This mass arrest rate shows the demand for the substance as well. With this, profits coming from the illegal substance goes into the hands of criminals and gangs. One of the most dangerous ones that we Americans fear the most, the cartels. This giant drug syndicate is coming into America to profit off the criminalization of cannabis to line their own pockets with money. These profits allow criminals, gangs, and cartels to further their own advance in the criminal underground. So now that I've concluded what's wrong with it being criminalized, it's time to elaborate on how it can become legalized. First, the first step in the legalization of cannabis is to create a voting ballot for it, which is odd because 60% of people in America favor the legalization of marijuana. This would take cannabis off the schedule and allow everyone above 21 to consume cannabis. The second step that would happen with the federalized legalization of cannabis would allow to release all of those with misdemeanors to be exempt from jail and taken off their record. Because a lot of times employers won't hire people that have drug possessions, as I don't even know why they want to. I would. And it makes them difficult to get jobs. The third step would be implement another DARE program. But this one wouldn't be based off of fear-mongering. It would actually educate on what cannabis is and what it does. This would greatly benefit the public as it would give exposure to the recently legalized business and would be able to further set people's opinions on it. The final step would allow dispensaries to go through banks. Since cannabis is federally legal, but it's legalized in some states, the businesses that are in the states could not go through the bank because the banks are usually federally owned and are under federal law. So that forces dispensaries to use large amounts of cash, which further ramps up criminal activity, as they will target business owners making trips from dispensaries to the bank because they have to do it by cash. Now that I've explained what the federal government can do to create a successful legalization process, it's time to move on to the benefits that cannabis would reap from it. If I told you that America was built off cannabis, would you believe me?
No.
Yes. I mean, what?
Yes.
Well, technically, it was hemp, but in the times of Jamestown, one of the first most successful settlements in America, every farmer was required to grow hemp. Also, our founding fathers, such as George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, also grew the plant. Cannabis has always been part of the United States economy, legal or not. According to the New Hampshire Business Review, Oregon, after the first week of sales, took in $11 million. If cannabis was legalized federally, not only would it increase the amount of taxes coming in from the revenue, but it would also take profits away from the organizations such as the cartels and gangs. The economic benefits that cannabis brings. The economic benefits that cannabis would bring would help community projects such as schools, roads, and possibly programs such as Habitat for Humanity. The substance would be taken out of the hands of the criminal underground and the profits would be rather diminished. Partial legalization still allows for a gray market, where there's legal states such as California and Colorado, which is legal, but there's still states that are illegal. And this gray market allows people in illegal states to obtain the cannabis from legal states, which still creates a black market. But if the entire nation legalizes, then that goes away. The most beneficial part of legalization is that people would be able to self-medicate at their own discretion and take care of any issues that they are facing without having to go to a doctor that will shove a pill down their throat. Research has found that cannabis can treat minor issues that can be self-diagnosed, such as anxiety, inflammation, and tremors, such as shaking or seizures. Legalization also will bring a giant recreational market that will not only benefit the government from tax revenue, but as well as the business industry that can supply hundreds of thousands of jobs. And now that I've explained the issues with the criminalization of cannabis, it's time to wrap it up. Today I've provided information on why the federal government should legalize cannabis. The economic benefits are practically endless. If America gets a jump in the legalization process in front of other nations and countries, there might be a connoisseur following behind American cannabis. The medical advantage that cannabis provides over other pharmaceuticals is unmatched because of the lack of use of cannabis and the lack of harm it causes to the human body. Hopefully in this speech I made you think about your potential stance on cannabis and have hopefully changed in favor of legalizing it. Since most of you are close to voting age or at voting age, I want you guys to go out and vote. And when you see cannabis, question and remember this speech and ask yourself if America would be a better place if it was legalized.